Welcome to Shatter.
Support the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. I promise even more interesting stories. I used to believe silence meant peace. That if no one was yelling, we were okay. That calm meant love. But that illusion shattered on a random Thursday night in front of 5 other people. We were at a dinner, her coworkers, mostly strangers to me, all laughing over drinks and stories I didn't belong to. I was there, but I wasn't part of it. And maybe that was the point. She leaned in toward one of the guys, Ryan, I think, a little too close, her laugh just a bit too performative. Her hand brushed his arm. Casual. Maybe innocent. Maybe not. Someone at the table made a joke, something about how long we'd been together. I smiled. She didn't. Instead, she tilted her head, looked at me like she was studying a blank canvas, and said, flatly, "You're just convenient. Not exciting." The table went silent. Even Ryan looked away. And I just sat there. I didn't say a word. Not because I didn't have anything to say, but because she needed the silence more than I needed the reaction. I looked at her. Really looked. And for the first time in a long time, I realized I was seeing a stranger. A woman who used to cling to my hand in crowds now recoiled from my presence like it was inconvenient. I smiled then. Just barely. Because something inside me had gone quiet in a way that felt permanent. She laughed awkwardly, trying to brush it off. "I'm just joking," she said. But her eyes didn't flicker the way they usually did when she was joking. There was no smirk. No softness. Only calculation. Detachment. Later that night, I stood at the sink, watching her scroll through her phone from the couch. We didn't speak. We hadn't spoken in any real way for weeks. She didn't apologize. She didn't even seem to think there was anything to fix. But I wasn't hurt. Not in the way I expected to be. I was done. Not angry. Not resentful. Just quietly done. And when I lay down beside her that night, I realized this wasn't a moment. This wasn't a phase. It was the beginning of something she wouldn't see coming. The moment I stopped chasing, explaining, justifying. Because I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to plead. I was going to vanish in plain sight. And she'd never notice until the silence was too loud to ignore. A few days after that dinner, I went by her office. I'd left my charger in her car, and I figured I'd just swing by and grab it. Nothing serious. But when I stepped through the glass doors, I saw her before she saw me. She was at the coffee station with a guy I didn't recognize. Tall, too casual. The way she tilted her head at him was familiar. Too familiar. The same way she used to look at me when everything was new. I froze, just long enough to see the way she laughed. Not the polite kind, not professional. It was softer, warmer. Like she still had that part of herself she'd told me no longer existed. I didn't say anything. I just turned around and walked back out. That moment didn't hurt in the traditional sense. It wasn't betrayal. It was confirmation. A quiet checkmark next to a suspicion I hadn't dared to name out loud. That night, I noticed something else. She got a message at 11:48 p.m. Her phone lit up beside her. She glanced at it, smiled, then locked the screen and placed it face down. She thought I didn't notice. I always noticed. I just hadn't let myself admit it. I didn't ask who it was. I didn't need to. The next morning, she joked that I seemed off. Said I was probably tired. Kissed me on the cheek like nothing was wrong. Maybe nothing was, for her. But for me, something shifted. I wasn't hurt anymore. I was studying. Watching. Listening. This wasn't about one man or one message. This was about a pattern. She had decided long ago that I wasn't worth choosing. Not fully. Not consistently. And I had chosen to pretend not to see it. Later that week, one of my friends, Jordan, invited me out for a drink. As we sat at the bar, he gave me that look. The one friends give when they know something's off, but don't want to say it too directly. He said her name, then paused. "You good, man?" I just nodded. I wasn't ready to say it out loud. That I was living with someone who treated me like an obligation. That I hadn't felt wanted in months. Instead, I changed the subject. But that night, when I got home, I found her already asleep. Her phone still glowing in her hand. And in that moment, I knew I wouldn't confront her. There wouldn't be yelling or scenes. There'd be distance. Quiet, controlled, strategic distance. She wouldn't even notice at first. But eventually, the absence would grow teeth. And she'd realize, far too late, that I wasn't angry. I was already leaving. People think it's one big betrayal that breaks you. But it's never just one thing. It's the accumulation of small signals, quiet inconsistencies that slowly eat away at the version of the truth you wish was real. I started noticing the details, not because I wanted to find anything, but because I'd finally stopped trying to ignore what was already there. It started with the shared calendar we used. She had once insisted we sync everything: appointments, trips, even grocery runs. But now, entire afternoons were blank. I'd come home and ask how her day went. She'd shrug and say, "Just meetings." No specifics. No eye contact. Then came the receipts. She never used to hide them. But one morning I was tossing trash into the kitchen bin and saw a folded one near the top, not crumpled like the others. A lunch at a hotel bar across town. For two. I didn't ask. I just started collecting data. Not for confrontation. Not for revenge. But for clarity. Bank statements. Message previews. New passwords on devices that used to stay unlocked. An AirTag she used for her luggage had been tracked somewhere it had no business being on a Tuesday afternoon. The signs were obvious now, but I didn't feel betrayed. I felt calm, because I was no longer trying to protect the relationship. I was protecting myself. I watched her more closely. Her phone always within reach. The way she'd flinch if I picked it up, even just to hand it to her. The way she laughed in the bathroom while texting, then walked out stone-faced. The emotional whiplash didn't hurt anymore. It confirmed something I'd already accepted. I wasn't her priority. Maybe I hadn't been for a long time. She kept going through the motions, calling me babe, reminding me to pick up eggs, asking if I needed anything from the store. But it was mechanical. Her presence was like furniture. Still there, still familiar, but cold and used. One night, I opened our old vacation photos. Just for a second. I wasn't nostalgic. I was analyzing, looking at her eyes. The way she leaned into me, the subtle ways she used to show affection. They were gone now, and not by accident. I had been holding on to the ghost of someone who'd already left. She was emotionally elsewhere, maybe physically too. And so, I stopped trying to fix anything. Instead, I started watching her the way she used to watch me in the beginning. Curious, careful, quiet. But this time, it wasn't love. It was observation. A calm before a silence she wouldn't be ready for. Because I wasn't planning to leave loudly. I was planning to disappear strategically. Without apology. Without announcement. Without giving her the closure she never earned. I didn't slam a door. I didn't scream. I didn't even leave a note. I just started disappearing in pieces. The first thing I cut off was availability. She was used to me being everywhere. Answering every text. Picking up every call. Filling in every gap. I used to do it without thinking. Now I thought about everything. I muted her notifications, not out of anger, but precision. I wanted space, not distance in miles, but in rhythm. A different pace. One where I wasn't orbiting her moods anymore. When she asked if I could pick something up after work, I said I had plans. I didn't. When she called to check in, I let it ring. The silence wasn't loud. It was surgical. She noticed faster than I expected. At first, it was subtle. A longer glance when I walked into the room. A second, "Hey," when the first one got no response. But I stayed quiet. I let the silence fill the space we used to call connection. I started working later, even if I had nothing to do. Took walks without telling her. Left the apartment before she woke up. No goodbye, no note. She texted once. "Where are you?" I read it. Locked my phone. Went back to sipping my coffee in a place she didn't know existed. It's strange how quickly routines can break when you stop reinforcing them. I had spent years holding up both sides of the structure. Now, with my hands down, the imbalance was impossible to ignore. She called again that night. Asked if I'd be home for dinner. I told her not to wait up. I didn't give reasons. I didn't create excuses. Just simple statements with no explanation. When I got home, she was on the couch, makeup smudged, one leg tucked under her, TV on but not playing anything. She looked up, almost startled. "You didn't say where you were," she said. I shrugged, walked past her, and closed the door behind me. No words. Just quiet. The next morning, I shut off location sharing. She didn't mention it. But I saw the way she looked at her phone and frowned, pretending not to care. I stopped asking how she was sleeping. I stopped offering to make coffee. I stopped waiting for her to come to bed. I still existed. I just wasn't present. The difference, I learned, is everything. Presence isn't about bodies in the same room. It's about energy. Focus. And mine was gone. I didn't ghost her. I became invisible in plain sight. At work, I was sharper, clearer. People noticed. My friends said I seemed more grounded. I told them I'd started putting myself first. But at home, the energy shifted. She was still there. But she had no map, no script, no way to control what was changing. Because I wasn't reacting. I wasn't explaining. I was done teaching her how to treat me. And in the silence that followed, she began to feel the weight of something she never believed she could lose. Not because I left, but because I stopped trying to stay. I wasn't looking for revenge. I wasn't trying to expose anyone. But silence gives you perspective. And perspective gives you power. The man from her office, the one she laughed with too easily, had a pattern. I started noticing it long before I admitted I cared. He'd show up in her stories, her tagged photos. Always just close enough to raise questions, never close enough to answer them. I didn't confront her. I confronted the data. Late one night, while she slept facing the wall, I opened her laptop. Not to read messages. I didn't need to. What mattered wasn't what she said, it was what she allowed. I found an email chain buried in her downloads. Not personal, not romantic, but revealing. A list of expenses flagged by their company's internal audit team. His name showed up twice, tied to purchases he couldn't easily explain. I screenshotted what I needed, closed everything, left no trace. The next day, I sent it anonymously to their HR department from a public library. No threats, no message, just facts. I didn't need to watch it unfold, but I did. Over the next week, she came home tenser, shorter, snapping at small things, the TV volume, the clutter in the hallway. She didn't say his name, but she didn't have to. Whatever was happening at work had bled into her posture. I listened carefully. Her tone when she picked up calls. Her pacing in the kitchen. The silence that followed one night when she threw her phone on the couch and just sat there, unmoving, eyes blank. Something had cracked. And it wasn't my doing. I had only peeled away the layer she thought no one could see. At one point, I overheard her on the phone with someone, probably him. She wasn't flirting this time. Her voice was low, clipped, defensive. He said he didn't know how it got processed under his card. A pause. Then, well, someone reported it, and now it's a whole thing. I didn't smile. I didn't feel triumph. Just confirmation that quiet action is more effective than loud accusations. She never asked if I was involved. Maybe she suspected. But part of her couldn't imagine me capable of that kind of precision. That's how far gone I was in her mind, an afterthought. Predictable. Passive. She had underestimated the version of me that stopped asking to be seen. And now, everything she had invested in behind my back was unraveling, not by confrontation, but by calculation. She paced more often now. Checked her phone like it might give her answers. But I gave her none. We still lived under the same roof. Still exchanged polite nods, short sentences. But the emotional infrastructure had collapsed. Her attention drifted back to me, subtly, like a hand reaching out in the dark. But I didn't reach back. Because while she was scrambling to hold on to what she thought she wanted, I was already moving forward. Not to prove a point. To make one. It didn't take long for the silence between us to spill into other rooms and other people. At first, she tried to hide it. Kept up the polished version of herself for friends, family, coworkers. The one who still had it all together. The one who never lost control. But cracks always show under pressure. We went to a small gathering one night. Just 6 people, old friends, familiar faces. She dressed like nothing was wrong, smiled through her makeup, laughed at the right moments. From the outside, it looked normal. But I didn't play along. I was there. I was polite. I was quiet. People noticed. Someone asked how work was going. I answered in one sentence and turned away. She reached for my hand. I didn't move. It was small, barely noticeable to anyone who didn't know us. But one person did notice, her friend Kate. She watched us closely that night, eyes darting between us like she was doing silent math. Later, while we were in the kitchen, I overheard Kate ask her softly, "Are you two okay?" Her voice dipped. "We're fine. He's just tired." But the problem with practiced answers is they never sound convincing when the foundation starts to shake. People weren't fooled. The shift wasn't loud, it was visible. The way I stopped offering small gestures. The way she tried to compensate, laughing louder, leaning in closer, faking ease. At one point, someone made a casual joke about relationships. Something harmless, something vague. And from across the room, Kate said, not to anyone in particular, "You can only ignore someone for so long before they stop showing up." The room went quiet. Then the laughter returned. But she didn't laugh. I watched her face. That moment landed. Later, in the car, She sat in silence longer than usual. Normally, she'd fill that silence with shallow questions. This time, she didn't even pretend to care about the answers. I didn't offer anything either, because this was the stage where other people started seeing what she never believed would unravel. This wasn't about fights or cheating. It was about detachment, a slow, suffocating erosion of connection. She started getting colder with them, too, her own friends. Defensive, irritable. She stopped replying to group chats, avoided dinners, told people she was just overwhelmed. But people don't back away from the happy. They back away from the uncomfortable. And that's exactly what she had become. Her sister called one afternoon. I picked up by accident. The screen lit up while my hand was near it. She sounded surprised to hear my voice, then cautious. "Is everything okay over there?" I said we were fine, then hung up before she could ask more. I wasn't going to explain. I didn't want sympathy. I didn't want anyone's validation. Because this wasn't a campaign to win people over. This was a slow unraveling, the kind you can't fake your way through. She didn't lose them because I said anything. She lost them because people eventually sense when something is one-sided, when someone is fighting alone. And for once, that someone wasn't me. The worst kind of loneliness isn't being alone. It's being surrounded by people who used to see you and realizing they don't anymore. That's what started happening to her. One by one, the calls stopped coming. The invites slowed down. Messages were left on read. Her friends didn't disappear, they just faded. The same way I had. At first, she chalked it up to timing. Everyone's busy. Life happens. But deep down, she knew. People sensed it. The tension, the shift, the way the light around her had dimmed without ever flickering. It wasn't loud. It was just cold. She started staying home more. Not out of choice, but because there was nowhere else to go. I still came and went as usual. Still moved through the house like I belonged, but not like I cared. That difference, I think, is what unsettled her most. I wasn't gone. I just wasn't hers anymore. She started testing the air between us, asking small things, offering coffee, leaving the TV on shows I used to like. I didn't react, not because I wanted to punish her, but because I had nothing left to give. One evening, I walked in to find her at the dining table, staring at a blank screen. Laptop open, not typing, just waiting, like she thought the right words might come if she sat still long enough. I didn't speak. I walked past her, sat on the couch, scrolled through my phone like her silence meant nothing to me, because now it didn't. She wasn't used to that. She had built a version of us where I was always the one reaching across the gap, always the one to fill in the emotional silence. Now I let it sit, and she didn't know what to do with it. I saw it in the way she moved, slower, heavier. In the way she hesitated before asking me anything, like she was bracing for the coldness she used to give me without hesitation. This was the version of her I had never seen before, unguarded, unsure, exposed. But it came too late. She had built a world where I was expected to carry the weight of both our hearts. And the moment I put it down, everything started falling apart, not with noise, but with absence. Her routine collapsed quietly. She stopped wearing makeup around the house. Stopped checking her phone like someone might be looking for her. Because no one was. Not anymore. She tried to lean on me, once. Stood too close in the kitchen. Brushed against my arm like it was an accident. Waited. But I didn't flinch. I didn't step forward. I just moved around her like she was furniture. Not out of cruelty, out of clarity. Because that's what happens when someone finally understands they've drained the last part of you that cared. She wasn't losing me. She had already lost me. And now, for the first time, she had to sit in that silence alone. Not because I walked away, but because I stayed and took everything with me. I always thought the big confrontation would come with yelling. That when things finally broke, there'd be shouting, doors slamming, someone walking out with a suitcase. But that's not how endings really happen. Not when the silence has already done most of the work. It started one evening. Ordinary. Quiet. I was on the couch, scrolling through emails. She stood by the hallway, watching me. Long enough that I finally looked up. There was something in her eyes I hadn't seen in a long time. Hesitation. Not attitude. Not sarcasm. Just uncertainty. She asked if we could talk. I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. I just set the phone down and looked at her. She started slowly. Said I'd been distant. Said something had shifted. That she couldn't feel me anymore. I didn't respond. She asked if something was wrong. If I was angry. If I was holding something back. I said I wasn't angry. I was just done trying. Her face tightened. I could see her struggling to decide whether to fight, cry, or pretend none of it mattered. She asked what that meant. Done trying. I told her I'd spent too long trying to hold up something she kept stepping away from. And now, I was simply doing what she'd always claimed she wanted, focusing on my own happiness. She went quiet after that. And that silence, the kind I used to be terrified of, didn't feel like punishment anymore. It felt like peace. She tried again. Said things didn't have to be this way. That people go through rough patches. That maybe we'd lost our rhythm, but we could find it again. But it wasn't about rhythm. It was about trust. And when someone looks you in the face and tells you your happiness isn't their responsibility, the music doesn't stop, it changes key. And you realize you've been dancing alone. I told her that. Not as a speech. Just as a fact. She looked like she wanted to interrupt, to fix it, to defend herself. But she didn't. Because the words she'd thrown at me months ago had finally come full circle. Now she was the one standing in front of someone who had already let go. The thing about being truly done is you don't raise your voice. You don't beg to be understood. You don't argue. You just don't care if the other person finally sees it. She asked if I still loved her. I didn't answer. Because maybe I did. Maybe I didn't. But that wasn't the point anymore. Love without respect is a fire without oxygen. It looks alive, right up until it dies without warning. She reached for my hand. I didn't pull away. But I didn't hold on either. That was the last thing I gave her, the moment she finally realized I had nothing left to rescue. Not her. Not us. Not anymore. Collapse doesn't look like chaos. Not at first. It looks like silence. Like someone holding it together in public while everything quietly rots behind their eyes. She began to unravel slowly. Not in front of me. Not with tears or screaming. But in the way she moved through the world like it no longer responded to her presence. She started waking up earlier, as if trying to reset something. She cleaned rooms that didn't need cleaning. Rearranged drawers. Picked fights with the laundry. She stayed busy, not because she had something to do, but because she couldn't sit still in the stillness I'd left behind. I still spoke to her. Short words. Measured tone. Nothing cruel. Nothing kind. Just neutral, the way people speak to someone they used to know. She tried to pretend we were okay, especially in public. But her friends didn't buy it anymore. One by one, they stopped coming around. A few still liked her posts. But no one asked how she was. Not really. She had told me once that I was dramatic for needing connection. For needing to feel chosen. Now she sat in the exact void she had created, a place where no one reached out, and she didn't know how to reach back. Her energy changed at work too. She came home later, more drained, more distracted. Some nights she didn't even eat. Just dropped her bag on the floor and sat at the kitchen table like she was waiting for something to make sense. But nothing did. The man she had flirted with? Gone. Quietly let go after the audit. She never mentioned him again. But I saw it, the bruised pride, the quiet panic. That chapter had closed behind her, and no one had bothered to tell her the door was locked. She tried to reconnect with her sister, with friends, with the version of herself she'd abandoned when she stopped valuing the life she had. But people didn't respond the way she wanted. There were too many missed calls, too many unanswered texts, too many years of showing up only when it served her. Now, no one rushed to save her. And I didn't either. Not because I hated her, but because I had nothing left to hand her. One night, I found her standing in the hallway, just standing. No coat, no shoes, no destination. Just there. She looked at me like she wanted to ask something, anything. But she didn't. She knew the answer. She had been slipping for weeks, but now she had landed. Fully. Finally. In that place where even pride couldn't hold her up anymore. She wasn't angry. She wasn't cruel. She was lost. And I wasn't going to guide her back. Because I had already mapped out a life that didn't require her voice to feel full. She had taught me that I was responsible for my own happiness. Now she was living inside that lesson. Alone. The end didn't come with a goodbye. It came in the form of stillness. One morning, I stood by the kitchen window, sipping coffee in a room that used to feel full. She entered quietly, like she didn't want to wake something she no longer understood. Her hair was pulled back. No makeup. Just a sweatshirt, bare feet, and the weight of everything she'd refused to carry until now. She didn't say anything. Just watched me for a moment, like she was trying to remember something, maybe who we were before all of this. Before the silence. Before she stopped choosing me, and I stopped asking to be chosen. I set the mug down, finished packing the last of my things. No suitcase. Just one small duffel bag. I wasn't leaving forever. I'd already done that months ago. This was just the moment the world caught up. She finally spoke. Not a plea, not anger, just a quiet confession. She said she was wrong, that she hadn't meant it, that she thought I'd always stay, that she didn't realize how far I'd already gone until there was nothing left to chase. She stood in front of the door, as if her presence alone could undo everything, as if proximity was still enough to hold me in place. But she didn't reach for me, and I didn't stop walking, because I had already said everything I needed to say in silence, in withdrawal, in the absence of begging or blame. She had built her comfort around the belief that I would always remain, that no matter how far she drifted, I'd pull her back. But I didn't, because I finally understood something she had taught me without meaning to. When someone tells you, through words or actions, that your happiness is not their concern, you'd be a fool to keep sacrificing yourself on their behalf. So I stopped. I walked past her like the ghost of a man who used to live here. The version of me who left notes on mirrors, made coffee before sunrise, stayed up to talk even when I was exhausted. He had died quietly. And in his place was someone who didn't need her recognition to feel real. She called after me once. My name. Just my name. It sounded like regret, but not love. I paused. Just for a second. Not for her. For me. To remember this moment as the final one, the last time I gave her a chance to be different. Then I opened the door. She didn't follow. And I didn't look back. Because there's nothing left in a space where you've already buried yourself to keep the peace. At the elevator, I waited in silence, alone, finally aligned with the quiet I'd been forced to carry. And as the doors opened, I said the only thing that needed to be said, not to her, but to the version of myself that had stayed too long. I didn't disappear. I just stopped showing up where I wasn't respected. What would you have done in my place? If the story hit you, leave a like. And don't forget to subscribe. It only gets stronger from here.